Usually when you think about physical infrastructure, right? Like a city's power grid, for example.
Right.
There's an expected capacity.
Right, absolutely.
You don't just plug a toaster into your kitchen wall and accidentally bring down the entire eastern seaboard. The system is engineered to handle normal human behavior.
Yeah, there are safeguards.
Exactly. But then you look at the digital world, and sometimes that predictability it completely fractures. Imagine a situation where someone releases a 90-minute behind-the-scenes home video, essentially, and it completely breaks a massive piece of national infrastructure.
It sounds impossible.
It does. And this wasn't some controversial political leak. It wasn't a global sporting event. It was literally a documentary about a guy getting ready to act in a movie. Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Our mission for this deep dive is to analyze a very specific moment in modern entertainment history. We're looking at Chapter 17 of our sources, the documentary that shook the world. We are diving into how lead actor Anant Sharma's 3-year, almost monastic dedication to the Indian epic film Bahubali triggered a massive domino effect across the globe.
What's fascinating here is that we aren't just looking at a clever movie marketing campaign. I mean, this transcends standard public relations entirely.
Yeah, it really does.
It serves as a profound case study in what happens when extreme, almost mythological levels of dedication are suddenly broadcast to a world, and specifically, to an entertainment industry that had just become incredibly complacent.
To really grasp the cultural impact of that broadcast, you have to start with the sheer brute force digital metrics of the premiere.
Oh, the numbers are just staggering.
Insane. Right. So they timed the release of Anant, the making of Bahubali, for 6:00 p.m. Indian Standard Time on a Friday.
Prime time.
Exactly. You're catching people right as they end their work week. And the official Bahubali YouTube channel had only existed for a week, but it already had 2.3 million subscribers just from the promise of this content.
Which is already a huge audience.
Right. So the clock strikes 6:00 p.m., the video drops, and within 60 seconds, 500,000 people clicked the link simultaneously.
Which instantly resulted in YouTube India's servers completely crashing.
Now, if you are listening to this and thinking, wait a minute, YouTube streams live events to millions of people all the time. Why couldn't a massive tech company handle one documentary video?
Yeah, it does seem super counterintuitive.
I mean, they handle live cricket matches without a hitch, really.
You do. But the mechanism of the crash is actually what makes this so unique. When YouTube streams a live cricket match, they anticipate the load.
Okay.
They use content delivery networks, or CDNs, to distribute that traffic across hundreds of servers geographically. But this documentary, it was just a standard video-on-demand upload. Right. So when 500,000 concurrent requests hit one specific video URL in a single localized region within 60 seconds, it acts essentially like a localized DDoS attack.
Wow.
Yeah, it completely overwhelmed the load balancers meant to route that traffic just because the concentration was so dense and so immediate.
It's like trying to force the entire population of a major city through a single revolving door at the exact same millisecond.
That is the perfect analogy.
So you have the digital marketing team panicking, videos buffering endlessly, error messages everywhere. And while the engineers in California and India are scrambling to manually allocate more servers to this specific node, the subscriber count starts doing something literally unprecedented.
The jump was unreal.
Between 6:05 p.m. and 6:20 p.m., the channel jumped from 3.2 million to over 8.1 million subscribers.
I mean, that averages out to roughly 50,000 new subscribers every single minute.
50,000 a minute.
Yeah. And it culminated in 15 million views in just the first 6 hours. Which honestly makes me question the nature of the engagement. Like, is this just the digital equivalent of rubbernecking?
What do you mean?
Are people clicking, realizing it's an hour-and-a-half long behind-the-scenes video, and immediately closing the tab? Because that happens a lot with viral links.
Well, the data tells a completely different story.
Right.
The average watch time for this 90-minute video was 84 minutes.
Wait, really? 84 minutes out of 90?
Yes.
That is almost impossible to believe. I mean, in an era where algorithms are optimized for 10-second attention spans, millions of people sat and watched an hour and 24 minutes of a documentary about making a movie.
They did. And it points to a massive shift in audience psychology. We've reached a point where the illusion of cinema is kind of dead. Audiences no longer just want the polished final product, They deeply value the labor of the art as much as the art itself.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and the Twitter reactions completely support this. People weren't just watching, they were genuinely emotionally overwhelmed by Anant's daily schedule. Right, because for 3 years, he was waking up at 4:30 a.m., undergoing brutal physical training until 7:00, shooting until 10:00 p.m., and then studying the Telugu language until midnight.
Exactly. Seeing that level of raw, unfiltered discipline struck a chord that standard movie trailers simply cannot reach.
And the sheer volume of that local traffic in India actually created the next phase of the phenomena, didn't it?
It did, yeah.
Because the metrics were so violently abnormal, international algorithms started picking the video up. They were dragging it into global feeds that traditionally completely ignore Indian behind-the-scenes content. And that is exactly how this localized server crash breached the Chinese market.
Right. And the entry point into China hinged on one specific moment in the documentary involving Jackie Chan's legendary stunt coordinator.
Oh man, this part is wild. So the stunt coordinator is on camera, and he watches it at work. And he doesn't just praise the choreography.
No, he goes way further.
He explicitly compares Anant's dedication to a young Jackie Chan. He talks about Anant's willingness to risk his own physical safety for the perfect shot and his genuine respect for the stunt team.
Which is huge.
He basically states that action is an art form to Anant, not just a spectacle to look cool in a poster.
And you have to understand, receiving that specific comparison from that specific veteran is the highest possible validation in Asian action cinema.
I can imagine.
So when that clip was subtitled in Mandarin and hit Chinese social media networks, particularly Weibo, the response was immediate. It amassed 50 million views in 72 hours.
50 million. That is just, wow.
Yeah. Phoenix TV, which is a major network in China, started running dedicated segments analyzing his training. Chinese distributors instantly began reaching out to the Bahubali production team to secure theatrical rights.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the documentary starts acting like a Rorschach test for different global industries. China zeroed in on the martial arts and stunt work. But when the documentary hit Hollywood, it triggered a fiercely polarized debate about makeup and prosthetics.
Right. This centers on the documentary's focus on practical effects. The Indian production team had actively recruited veteran Hollywood artists, including Susan Henriksen.
And she came from Rick Baker's legendary makeup effects team, right?
Exactly. And there is a very poignant moment where she actually breaks down crying on camera.
I found that moment so jarring. You don't expect to see a seasoned Hollywood technician weeping in a behind-the-scenes promotional video. Why did this project break through her professional armor like that?
She was reacting to a profound sense of artistic validation that she had largely lost in her own country. The American studio system had spent the last decade effectively telling physical makeup artists that their craft was obsolete.
Right, because of the heavy pivot toward pure CGI.
Exactly. But Anand and the Indian production team didn't want these veterans as cheap outsourced labor. They wanted them as honored craftspeople. Anand told her personally that her team's physical, tactile knowledge couldn't just be replaced by a computer algorithm.
Which is such a powerful message. And the old guard in Hollywood felt immensely vindicated by this. Guillermo del Toro tweeted about how humbling it was to see Indian filmmakers honoring the physical artists that Hollywood was actively throwing away.
Yeah, that tweet got a lot of traction.
And Rick Baker actually came out of retirement just to tweet his praise. He pointed out that blending tradition with technology having a physical, practical effect on set actually gives digital artists a much better foundation to build on.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, to understand the mechanics of why Rick Baker is right, you have to look at how visual effects actually work.
Okay, lay it on me.
When you use a purely digital CGI model, the animators have to invent the lighting, the gravity, the texture, and the subsurface scattering of light on skin from a completely blank pixel grid.
Which is incredibly difficult.
Right, and it often looks floaty or artificial. But when you have a physical prosthetic on a real actor's face, the camera captures actual photons bouncing off a physical object in real-world lighting. The digital artists then just enhance that reality. It grounds the CGI.
But not everyone in Los Angeles wanted to hear that lecture, did they?
No, they certainly did not.
Some studio executives were incredibly dismissive, calling the documentary's focus on physical props nostalgia. They argued that CGI is cheaper and faster, and that an Indian production company trying to teach Hollywood about visual effects was laughable.
And their defensiveness reveals a lot about the tension between artistic integrity and corporate efficiency. Those executives were pushing back because the documentary exposed a very uncomfortable truth.
Which was?
By abandoning practical tactile effects for cheap digital shortcuts just to save money, Hollywood was actually degrading the quality of its own blockbusters. The documentary proved to a global audience that blending physical craft with digital enhancement yields a vastly superior product.
That tension over craftsmanship in Hollywood actually triggered a completely different kind of crisis in Bollywood. While American executives were arguing over how movies are made, Indian executives were panicking over who was making them.
The reckoning within Bollywood's work culture was stark. Aditya Chopra, the head of Yash Raj Films, convened an emergency meeting.
This is wild.
He required all of his top executives, directors, and producers to sit in a boardroom and watch the full 90-minute documentary in complete silence.
Imagine being in that room. You have industry titans like Karan Johar and Sajid Nadiadwala. Nadiadwala has been producing blockbusters for 20 years. He's worked with 3 generations of massive stars. And he is sitting there watching this documentary, realizing he has never seen this level of commitment in his entire career.
The contrast was impossible to ignore. I mean, Anand wasn't just doing his own stunts. The documentary showed him personally managing complex relationships with international teams, treating the lowest-ranking technical crew with deep respect, and constantly deflecting credit away from herself.
Which was not the norm.
Not at all. It stood in direct opposition to the standard behavior of many Bollywood stars at the time, where showing up 4 hours late, demanding rewrites, and treating the crew poorly were often just accepted as the cost of doing business.
So after the screening, Aditya Chopra didn't sugarcoat the situation. He laid down a harsh new mandate for his studio. He started that the industry's baseline standards had to fundamentally change.
Yep.
Strict punctuality, rigorous physical and mental preparation, and absolute respect for the crew were no longer optional. His warning to any dissenting stars was brutally simple: adapt or become obsolete.
Which is a huge paradigm shift.
It is, but I had to push back on Chopra's logic here. I mean, I understand the frustration, but can you really mandate passion from the top down?
It's a fair question.
Aditya spent 3 years doing 18-hour days entirely driven by his own internal compass. You can't just put a clause in a standard actor's contract that says, must possess mythological levels of willpower.
You certainly cannot legislate passion, and Chopra knew that. He explicitly stated in that meeting that he did not expect every actor to become a clone of Anand. The strategy was entirely different.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Chopra was using the documentary to lift the veil of ignorance from the audience. For decades, the audience didn't know how movies were made, so they accepted whatever performance was put on screen.
Ah, I see. Because the documentary showed the public the literal sausage-making of a true epic, the audience now knows what baseline excellence actually looks like.
Precisely. It wasn't about demanding every actor train for 3 years. It was about raising the absolute floor of professional standards.
That makes total sense.
If Anand can show up on time every single day for 1,000 days while carrying a multi-million-dollar epic on his back, then a standard lead actor shooting a romantic comedy has zero excuse for being 3 hours late to set. Chopra recognized that audience expectations had just been permanently elevated.
They were going to start rejecting half-hearted, diva-driven performances because they now possess the vocabulary to demand better.
Exactly.
But, while the industry executives were furiously taking notes on his work ethic, we do have to acknowledge what the general internet was initially obsessing over.
We do.
Because Anand's physical transformation was the undeniable Trojan horse that brought millions of casual viewers into this documentary in the first place.
And the physical metrics were staggering. Standing at 6'3", Anand had built a 95-kilogram, intensely lean physique trained specifically in Kalari.
And for those who might not be familiar with that term, Kalari or Kalari Payattu is an ancient, highly demanding Indian martial art. It is heavily weapon-based, requires extreme flexibility, and demands a level of discipline that goes far beyond standard gym weightlifting.
Right, and that rigorous training produced a physique that looked less like a modern bodybuilder and more like a classical sculpture brought to life.
Naturally, the media went wild. You had explosive high-gloss coverage across major lifestyle publications: Vogue India, GQ India, Femina. But if I'm being honest, when I first saw those magazine covers with the 8-pack on full display, I assumed we were just looking at standard, superficial objectification.
Sure, just another handsome guy selling a movie.
Exactly. But what fascinates me is how the cultural discourse violently pivoted away from his body and towards something much deeper.
The article in Femina actually catalyzed that pivot. Their editorial team pointed out that while the physical attraction was the initial hook, the root of the public's obsession was entirely anchored in his character.
Wow.
Yeah, the magnetism wasn't the muscles, it was the complete lack of ego despite his massive success. It was his consistent, genuine respect for the people around him, particularly women.
And that sentiment culminated in a massive viral moment from the South Indian actress Nayanthara. She posted a tweet that completely reframed the conversation.
It really did.
She essentially argued that Anand's professionalism, the fact that he doesn't harass anyone, he doesn't leverage his immense industry power for personal favors, and he treats a junior makeup artist with the exact same dignity as a studio head, is the true ideal of masculinity. And that tweet didn't just get a little traction. It received 500,000 likes.
Which is huge. The resonance of that tweet serves as a sharp indictment of the entertainment industry's status quo. Audiences, and particularly women, were reacting so strongly because true authenticity is exceptionally rare in an industry built entirely on manufacturing illusions.
So what does this all mean?
Well, this raises an important question about what we actually value. They were starved for a male lead who embodied grounded, quiet professionalism rather than toxic, aggressive machismo.
The irony is that Anand himself was reportedly deeply uncomfortable with all of this attention. In the documentary, they reveal he completely swore off any romantic relationships for 3 years just to avoid distractions that could jeopardize the film.
Talk about dedication.
Right. He tells his friend Sudhir that he feels like an imposter being labeled a symbol of ideal masculinity. And Sudhir's advice to him is profound. He tells Anand to stop fighting it and just embrace his own authenticity. Because the audience can intuitively smell the difference between someone performing a persona for the press and someone who just genuinely cares about their craft.
It just proves that audiences are sophisticated enough to value the character behind the physique more than the physique itself.
Absolutely. And that demand for authenticity and supreme quality directly leads to the final and undoubtedly most expensive ripple effect of this entire documentary. If a cultural shift changes what audiences expect to see, it inevitably forces a change in where they actually go to see it.
This is where the sheer financial leverage of the documentary became undeniable. We discussed digital servers crashing earlier, but in the physical world, the major theatrical exhibition chains began pouring astronomical sums of money into concrete, steel, and screens.
The scale of this investment is hard to wrap your head around. PVR INOX, which is a massive theater chain, released a formal statement confirming a 2,200 crore rupee investment triggered directly by the confidence this documentary provided.
It's massive.
To put that in perspective for our global listeners, that is roughly $265 million US.
They were allocating an average of 150 crore rupees, about 18 million US dollars for every single new Cineplex location.
Wow.
And these weren't standard theaters. These were 15 new, ultra-premium locations explicitly equipped with Dolby Vision dual laser projection, Dolby Atmos, immersive sound, and luxury seating.
It is the ultimate financial gamble. It is the equivalent of a city building an entire multi-billion-dollar Olympic village just because they watched one really impressive training montage of an athlete on YouTube.
Right.
They were betting hundreds of millions of dollars on the promise of a movie that wasn't even out yet.
But from the perspective of the theater chains, they weren't gambling, they were mitigating risk. The documentary served as an ironclad global proof of concept. Carnival Cinemas and several regional chains also immediately accelerated their own massive physical upgrades. The documentary didn't just show an actor working out, it showcased the immense practical scale of the production.
Right. The massive physical sets, the thousands of costumed extras.
Exactly. The cutting-edge camera technology. It provided empirical proof to these business owners that the final film's production values were going to match or exceed the biggest Hollywood blockbusters.
So the theaters realized that their legacy infrastructure literally could not handle the technical specifications of the film. If audiences are demanding this unprecedented level of practical craft and visual fidelity, they're not going to pay to watch it on a flickering screen with blown-out speakers.
Nope.
The documentary effectively told the exhibition industry, we're spending years building a masterpiece. You had better construct a museum capable of actually displaying it.
And the theaters complied. They fundamentally changed the Indian cinema-going experience because, for the first time in recent history, domestic content demanded world-class physical facilities to meet a guaranteed, unprecedented audience demand.
When you step back and look at the sheer weight of what this single 90-minute video accomplished, it defies logic. We are talking about 127 million views globally within a week. The Bahubali YouTube channel sitting at 18.7 million subscribers before releasing a single frame of the actual feature film.
It's just wild.
And the most anxiety-inducing part of all this, the actual theatrical trailer for the movie was still 10 days away from being released.
The psychological pressure on Anant and the director, S.S. Rajamouli, must have been astronomical at that exact moment.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
The documentary succeeded in showing the world the agonizing, grueling journey of creation. It elevated global expectations to a terrifying height. But the upcoming trailer, and eventually the 3-hour film itself, had to definitively prove that the destination was actually worth that journey. The documentary completely erased any margin for error.
We've just spent this entire deep dive analyzing how a simple behind-the-scenes video acted like a power surge that forced a global industry to scramble. It crashed national routing servers, it forced international theaters to rebuild their physical architecture from the ground up, it triggered a massive existential crisis about professional ethics in Bollywood, and it started global debates about the value of physical art and the definition of modern masculinity.
It's a lot to take in.
It really is. So I want to leave you with this final thought to mull over as you go about your day. If the mere shadow of this film, just the story of its preparation, can break the internet, command $250 million investments, and rewrite the rules of a global industry. Wait, no, I just realized. Think about what happens next. What on earth is going to happen to the world when the actual movie finally premieres?